Fox approached IBM and they said, well, we have this movie coming out. It's called Morgan. So we thought, let's send Watson to film school.
Morgan was part of a breakthrough.
Skip, don't go in there, okay?
Oh, what?
Don't you go down there, Skip!
Don't be afraid, Amy. I have to go say goodbye to Mother.
You have the whole of the Morgan movie, and you can see where action is taking place.
Watson is the tool that's helping arrange the visuals, but it still needs the human element. So then I can come in and just supervise the creative aspect of it.
It's still very difficult to think of how a computer might be capable of original thought, something that's essential in creativity.
Oh my God, the robots are gonna take our jobs. All right, are we awake yet? All right, are we ready for lunch? Sorry. 30 minutes till lunch. So I love starting off with that Watson Morgan trailer video because I think in 60 seconds it does a great job of simply explaining how AI and machine learning are going to be used in sort of the creative and marketing roles in the world. If you watch intently and you watch some of the text and they understood what is the first thing that they had to do with Watson. So any AI-driven machine, as you all know, starts like a baby. It knows nothing, right? So the first thing they had to do is train the machine on horror movies. So they fed 100 horror movies into the machine to train it so that Watson, in this case, could break it down, find patterns, and figure out what makes a good horror movie, right? So fundamentally, the first part of this and the role ultimately in marketing and sort of one of the key drivers of success is going to be time and learning, right? The second piece of you thought is one of the greatest values of it was time savings. So historically, it would take a human about a month, 30 days, to basically manually go through a movie and pick out the best scenes and turn that into a 1-minute trailer. So 30 days. And Watson was able to do that in 24 hours. Learn it, find the scenes, break it down. But the third piece and the most important piece is this, and also what's on the screen, is the idea that it still needs, AI, these machines and where we're going with marketing, still fundamentally needs humans, right? We still need humans to own and drive and manage the machines. And in this case, in the creative and marketing worlds, ultimately still oversee and have that final oversight on creativity. But as we all know, sort of AI and machine learning are a part of our daily lives, right? Whether it's talking to Siri, whether it's driving down here and doing voice activation, Alexa, etc. But also it's things like music, right? Whether you're using Pandora, Spotify, or GS7, it's using machine learning to find patterns and figuring out connections between each of you of the different types of music you like and make recommendations. So AI and machine learning are part of our world every day. And who would have guessed this one?
Its built-in artificial intelligence learns the flour we use and figures out how much water and flour to mix. And to save time, its computer runs things inside in parallel. So you get one fresh puffed roti a minute. When it puffs, you know it's well cooked.
How many people have an AI-powered roti machine? Actually, a couple of you. Yeah, go figure, right? Who would have guessed that, right? My point being is that, if you're not ready or not believing in sort of where we're going with AI and machine learning, it's already permeating every part of your daily life, the kitchen, music, ordering from Amazon, you name it. And so I believe in 2021, and literally within 2 years, virtually every aspect of marketing that you use, every marketing technology, every activity, every process will be powered by some form of AI or machine learning. Right? And so I've been speaking, I've probably done about 50 presentations in the last 2.5 years to marketing audiences around AI and machine learning and what its impact is going to be on marketers. And obviously early on, a lot of sort of the questions and the conversation was really just, talking people down off the ledge, and people were afraid that it's going to take their jobs, but fundamentally explaining what they are, right? And now I've really seen that what that's moving to is everybody's sort of on sort of a level playing field of starting to understand what AI and machine learning are and sort of what its role might be in the marketing area. But fundamentally, then, how do we take advantage of it? So that's what I'm going to kind of close out with. But before I do that, I wanted to basically talk about 4 trends that I think are sort of key drivers of ultimately going to be either enablers to help all of you take advantage of AI and machine learning in marketing and in your organization, but also those that are actually going to make it more difficult that you have to sort of address and deal with. And the first is, and we've heard a lot about this for those of you that have been in for the other sessions and panels, heard a lot about data and the sort of the explosion of data, right? And so, you know, you've all seen slides and charts like this, but fundamentally, you know, most of our data that we have in the organization, and particularly in sort of the marketing world, 80% of that is unstructured, right? 20% structured, meaning, you know, it's sort of easier to get at, obviously, when it's structured. But one analyst firm thinks that basically only about 30% of that data is actually meaningful and useful. That's one of the things that we heard a lot about on the previous panels. But that most of us are only taking advantage of less than 1% of that. So data, the proliferation of it is obviously well known, but most of us are struggling to actually use it and take advantage of it. And the second piece is that while most of us here in the US maybe are not that directly impacted by GDPR, if you're a global organization, you probably have been. You've had to deal with cleaning up your data and getting and repermissioning things if you market into Canada with Castle. And how many people are familiar with CCPA that's coming to California? Ouch, that's scary, like 2 of you. So CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, if you're familiar with GDPR, is going to be similar to that. It is going to be life-changing and change your how you spend your time, and you're going to be, unfortunately, spending a lot of time not marketing but dealing with in-house counsel. It's basically getting at giving consumers more privacy and control over their data. And so what we found, we did a survey of IT and marketing organizations in the UK, and that we found that when they were going through the GDPR process, is that most organizations, even though it was a royal pain for them, understood that it was an opportunity to actually change processes and change how they were organized and actually get their act together to have better control over their data. And why I think this is hugely of value, and ultimately why the California Privacy Act is going to cause a huge amount of pain for you, that ultimately it's going to force a lot of organizations to get their data ownership and permissions and things together that will benefit you from a consumer communication and the ability to leverage data for AI and machine learning. So ultimately, you know, it's going to turn into a positive. The second trend is too much technology. If you were here for the first session, there was a slide on this as well. There are now over 7,000 marketing technologies out there in the marketplace. I hate this slide. I think it's actually really irrelevant. The one that matters, the point that matters, is how many technologies you're using in your own organization. Forrester, a couple years ago, said that in enterprises, the average number of marketing technologies or technologies that marketers are using in their organization is 91. A lot of you in this room are sort of smaller companies, organizations. Even at smaller organizations, you're probably using 25, 40, or 50 different applications to help you in the marketing world. So how do you bring that data together? Right? Today it's a problem, syncing up that. But if you move forward a couple years ago and realizing so much of what you're doing in marketing is going to be leveraging machines, right, that are helping with analysis and driving decisions and actually deploying marketing decisions and communications, then you have to get your data together to deal with that. And so that means bringing and integrating those technologies together. We had 2 basically CMO panels today, if you were here before this session. I was surprised they actually didn't talk a lot about this, but Gartner has looked at the marketing budget and how CMOs are sort of spending their dollars and budgets. And last year, basically for the first time ever, marketing technology exceeded other areas. And so there's a sort of a new role that's emerged in many companies. There's probably some of you in this room, Chief Marketing Technology Officer. That's sort of been a role that's emerged over the last few years. So whether you as a CMO are taking that on or not, there's almost a T now in your title, because a third, a fourth, 40%, whatever, of your budget, how you're spending your time is all based around technology. The third one is, despite that proliferation of data and technology, you and the people in your organization are getting more tech savvy, right? They're understanding this, right? My oldest daughter, she's actually getting her master's in London right now. She worked at Clorox in London at age 21 for 3 years. She was dealing with APIs and technology and integrations and stuff. And she was born, right, with the internet. She was born on smartphones. How many of you know what a slide rule is? Raise your hand if you know what a slide rule. Wow, impressive. Well, I asked this question 2 weeks ago at an email marketing conference, and like 5 people raised their hand. My first year in college, slide rule 101 was required. A, that's how old I am, but B, that's how much times have changed, right? When you're in your 20s now, right? Young people today actually in marketing, right? When I joined marketing, right, what did most people have? They had a French literature or English major or something like that, right? I don't think marketing majors existed back then, but today kids are joining marketing and they know how to program, right? Many of them in marketing actually know how to program, write code and things like that. So the marketer of today is changing. So one of the things that we did, I led a study where we identified 9 different trends for the years. And I love coming up with sort of acronyms and buzzwords. And one of them was what I call the Marteketer, this idea that this new young marketer that's joining your organization, or that you will be hiring if you're not, is actually extremely tech savvy, right? So with all of these sort of trends and data and everything that are going on, increasingly, if you're not hiring this type, you're going to need to, right? Because you're going to have people in marketing organization that basically give you more control over your technology and integrations and APIs, right? Whether they're actually, writing the API connections or not, they need to know how to interface with IT. But increasingly, how many of us remember how we always used to blame everything in marketing IT because they couldn't get our landing page up? And because of that, whole companies, software companies emerged for you to be able to create landing pages on your own, right? Because we couldn't rely on IT. Increasingly, that trend is going to only grow, and that marketing will be more self-contained. The second piece of it, my other made-up word, is consultancy. In most parts of the world today, the largest digital marketing agencies are Accenture Digital, IBM iX, Deloitte Digital, former consulting firms that have created these arms. It's not your traditional agencies. Consulting firms are now the largest marketing agencies in the world. And why is that? You go back a couple of slides to where I showed the marketing budget. That's why. Those consulting firms followed the money, right? The money now in IT is being spent in marketing. The second piece of that is, as we all know, people, process, strategy, and technology are required for companies to successfully implement and take advantage of the proliferation of technology in an organization. That's not historically what agencies did, but consulting firms understand change management, people, process, strategies, so they have swooped in, and increasingly you are working with not only people inside your organization that are insanely tech savvy, but your agency partners are able to help you with that as well. The other thing is the DIY syndrome that's happening, right? Increasingly, you're not just writing checks to SaaS companies, right, that are providing marketing technologies, but you now have the ability to build your own and make integrations via APIs by disaggregating software solutions through microservices, right? And of course, what I'm talking about today, AI and machine learning and SDKs, right? Increasingly, your organization is able to build your own custom solutions. So there's a lot going on with technology. And my favorite, the fourth one before I dive back into sort of AI and machine learning, is something that's been talked about a lot today, is the idea of customer centricity. So we're here in Silicon Valley, right, where the cloud, SaaS, again, when I started in my career the internet didn't even exist. But later on, in my first sort of what we now call cloud company, we called it ASP. Anybody remember that? And then web-based and hosted, right? And then Mark Benioff came along and called it, what did he call it back then? SaaS, I guess. And then all of a sudden we're on cloud. Who knows what it's going to be in 5 years from now? But the idea is that we went from on-prem installed software on CDs and things like that to everything's gone to a subscription, right? But it's not just us here in technology, we're everything, right? We're getting food shipped to our house every month. We're buying razors via subscriptions. Cars, they're talking about jets, basically, for people that not just net jets, but just for those of us in this room that travel a lot. Pretty soon you'll have like air travel subscriptions. Everything is moving to a subscription. And so what does that mean if you're in marketing, right? The panels we've heard about talk today, right? What do they talk a lot about? There's a lot about branding. There's a lot about product. There's a lot about customer experience. There's a lot about leads, right? MQLs, sort of amazing number of acronyms, right? But all of that is basically about acquiring, most of that is about acquiring customers. Fundamentally, as we move forward into more of a subscription model in the subscription world, right? Your customers are at risk every 30 days, right? In a subscription world, your customers are at risk every 30 days. And so our job as marketers increasingly is going to change and focus, I believe, much more on the retention side. Because ultimately, and if you've ever gone to any of these SaaS conferences where the VCs get up on stage and they show the growth rate of startups that have a 90% customer retention versus those with a 82%, right? I'm going to make up the numbers. One becomes a $25 million company and the other an $8 million in 3 years or something like that. My math is wrong. I'm making it up. But you get the point. Like fundamentally, marketing is going to switch and be focused more on that. But how are we organized, right? Again, this was a lot of the focus of the previous two sort of panels, but fundamentally we're still organized in silos, right? Marketing, sales, e-commerce, customer support, et cetera. So bringing that all together is going to be, I think, fundamentally key, for success, but also ultimately for being able to bring together data for AI and machine learning. And I love this quote: the role of the CMO is evolving into the chief experience officer. And we heard a lot about that in the previous sessions, whether it's chief customer officer, experience officer, whether they actually own all those functions or not, or just bringing it together. Who better but marketing to actually own and understand the customer and sort of bring these things together? All right, so those were sort of four trends that I think are sort of key to how you need to think about the role of where AI and machine learning are going to play in marketing going forward. Some of them are going to make life easier, some of them more difficult, some of them are the reason you're going to want to focus more on it. So I love this matrix from PricewaterhouseCoopers consulting people, found this a couple years ago. Fundamentally, in the creative and marketing area, we see that there are two areas where AI and machine learning are going to have the most value. And one is helping create those better customer experiences, right, which is why we all exist. And the second one, the more interesting one to a lot of us, because it's less obvious, is making life easier for us as marketers, right? For your team, making your marketers have more fun, more efficient, and allowing them to spend more time on more strategic things and more creative things that they like. So there's obviously a million different applications, from chatbots, right, and analytics and content creation and content management and better customer analytics, predicting behavior, content management, et cetera. And so what I'm going to do is, the way I like to think about breaking it down and have you think about the role and the opportunities for AI and machine learning in the marketing organization, is think about it as what problem are you going to try to solve, and then think about AI and machine learning as sort of tactics that you can help sort of address and solve or take advantage of those. So I'm going to look at three. That was three. Three sort of quick, simple examples to help sort of bring it to life, and then we'll close out and we'll get you to lunch. So the first one is fundamentally what a lot of us in marketing spend a lot of our time thinking about. How do we improve campaign performance? How many of you in this room have ever written a subject line for a marketing email? Raise your hand. Okay, quite a few of you, not quite half, about a third, something like that. How many of you think you're really effing good at it? Raise your hand. Wow, a lot of brave people, about 5, 6 people. So I just did a keynote at the largest email marketing conference in Savannah, Georgia 2 weeks ago with 400 email marketers in the room. And fewer people there raised their hand, right? And that's all they do. But my point being is that I've never seen, I think the most hands in a large audience I've ever seen raised was like 8 people in Detroit. I have no idea why. But you know, fundamentally, we think of this as a pretty simple concept, a pretty simple task, but most people actually recognize they're probably not really awesome at it. And so I believe that AI and machine learning are one of the simplest, and it is one of the first areas that's being tackled to write better subject lines than we as humans can do. So this is a video without sound. It's from a company, startup, it's about 4 years old now, called Phrasey out of the UK. And they use AI and machine learning to write subject lines. They're now at 98% better than humans. In other words, they have control groups for every subject line, the machine that they write. And when they started off 3 years ago, they were at 96% better. They're now at 98%, right? Headed towards 99%. What they do, what makes this, to me, one of the things that's fascinating about what they do is they now have 4 full-time linguists on staff. And so the first thing they do when you come on as a client is they actually interview you. They interview your brand managers, your email people, people across the organization, and they understand and basically create profiles of what is the essence of your brand, right? They find out, are you a serious brand? Do you have humor? Are you edgy? Right? Can you use swear words? Like are you a discounting company, right? Who are you communicating to? And they basically then take that and they feed it into their machine, right? And so then the machine, basically the Phrasey AI machine, starts to understand each individual company. And so it starts to build out its profile and its algorithm rules of what kind of content it's going to create or not create. And they feed that in there, and it comes up with 10 different subject lines, and you can continue to train it. You tell it what you don't like, do like, run it. And as I mentioned, that they're now at 98% better. One of the challenges of it, though, is that they primarily are only working with like retailers who send, billions of emails a year, because one of the things that they found is it takes that level of data of volume to have the highest accuracy. In other words, for the machine to actually come up with the best recommendations of content. So, and that's one of sort of the core challenges with AI and machine learning and marketing, is especially for a lot of smaller organizations, there are a lot of aspects of it that you might not just have enough data yet to take advantage of it. Everybody seen images like this, the concept desire paths, right? The idea that when we as designers, whether we're designing walkways in parks or website navigation or journeys and things like that we have great intent, but ultimately customers take their own paths, right? So how do we uncover lost revenue? How do we find more lost revenue? So there's one way, is a concept that we call struggle detection. So you use AI and machine learning to basically, what you do is you create end goals, and maybe that's check out a cart, maybe that's register to download a white paper, like whatever it is, but you basically create different kind of endpoint goals. And what these tools will do is it'll understand and predict and learn over time sort of the paths that people are taking to get to that particular conversion goal or whatever that end goal it is. And what it does is it's able to then uncover when people are struggling, that it can basically predict people that are going down a path to a particular end goal. And then it can recognize where consumers are actually struggling to get to that. It might be that you have a malfunctioning cookie. It might be that you have poor colors on your website. It might be that the buy now button is buried or whatever. We worked with an airline that basically had that problem of they had the sort of the, buy your tickets button that was off to the right and to sort of below the fold, if you will. And the background color was very similar to sort of the rest of the page. And they found that literally people couldn't find it. They recovered $8 million in lost airline revenue, like literally overnight, right? Because it was able to uncover these sort of struggles. So it's a really simple example, but powerful one of using sort of these growing tools to basically predict and understand sort of human behavior, where they're going, and uncover these lost revenue opportunities. There was a study of IT departments that was done several years ago that found that on average, people in IT departments wasted 4.5 hours per week. And that was broken down in 2 areas. Part of it was they were just looking for stuff. They couldn't find stuff. Right? And the other half of it was they recreated the things that they were looking for, right? And so I couldn't find a similar study on marketing, but my assumption is that it's sort of very similar. I know in my role I spend gobs of time just looking for stuff, right? So I'm guessing that the numbers are pretty powerful. So how great would that be to be able to use technology to actually solve what's probably technology-created problems? One is very simple. Is using image recognition, right? So one of the sort of the foundations of AI is using image recognition. You upload a photograph to Facebook, right? It immediately tags you. That is being brought into marketing as well, so content management, right? So the idea, if you work particularly in a large organization, you might have thousands or tens of thousands of visual assets, images, product photos, things like that, videos, things like that. Capturing those and finding them when you need them can be really complex, especially when you probably have different employees over the years that have named them things, you're doing different sort of how they categorize them and stuff. So with AI, in this case, it's Watson. You basically upload images and it goes through and it reads it and it makes tags. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but the second tag from the left there says sweater. That is not a sweater. Right? So first pass around, it gets it wrong. But fundamentally, as we started with the Morgan trailer video, this is about learning, right? So all you simply do is X out the sweater. And so Watson in this case, but whatever AI tool it is, learns and gets smarter. So every time you upload another image, right, it's going to learn from that, know, and get smarter and smarter. You can inject your own sort of how you refer to things and stuff. So fundamentally, one part of it is going to make us just, our life as marketers, simply just being able to access assets.
So how does this drop compare to all campaigns over the past year?
This campaign is ranked 238 out of 250 campaigns over the past year.
Amazing. So straight away, and just as I thought, he's found out that this campaign, this drop, is ranked 238 out of 250. So there's clearly a problem with this that we need to go and have a look at. So let's ask him. What metrics did you use to calculate this?
Here are the metrics used.
Excellent. So this is familiar to any marketer. This is the stats that we would expect to see. You know, we're seeing our click rate is higher. Okay, Watson. How is it trending?
The performance rank of this campaign is trending down.
Okay.
So that's what we call Watson Assistant. That is here. It's been out for 6 months or whatever. So if you think about how you're increasingly interacting with technology, right? Whether it's dictating notes and things to Siri, or you're ordering, more laundry detergent via Alexa, whatever it is. Whether you're again driving in your car and you're asking for directions and stuff. Voice interaction. The next hottest thing in marketing is obviously search. Right, by voice-based search, right? But shouldn't we interact with our software, our marketing tools via voice as well? So we think that's where this is going. So phase 1 of this, we call this like being an intern, right? So phase one of this sort of interactivity with AI tools, and in this case, in sort of your marketing automation solution, is to be able to save you time by finding things. So you're going to ask it, find particular campaigns. Find me a campaign that has the words, B2B software solution in it, whatever it is. It'll find that. You can benchmark. You can find campaign data. You can find sort of your highest performing campaigns. In other words, it's going to be sort of the thing that you used to give to interns to go find stuff. That's phase one. But ultimately, we see this is that you're going to have a dialogue with your marketing solution. Tell it what your goals are, and it's going to actually make recommendations and actually create content and create campaigns and deploy them for you, right? That's probably about 3-4 years from now, but that's where we're going to, right? Fundamentally, AI and machine learning is going to take over how we interact with marketing. All right, so close out takeaway so we can get you to lunch. I can hear those growling stomachs. A couple of just quick final thoughts. One, as we've heard today, it's all about data. Marketing has always been about data, but increasingly in a world of AI and machine learning, where what you feed into the machines, those struggles, all that different content is going to drive its output. So if you can't integrate, if you can't break down those silos, if you can't bring things together, ultimately these machines that are doing these predictive analytics, that are making recommendations on which customers you should target, how often you should communicate to them, with what offers, if it doesn't have all of the right data on your customers, it's going to make the wrong recommendations. So fundamentally, the most important thing you have to think about as you leave here today is you've got to find a way to take care of your data. And that means breaking down silos, right? Got to break down those silos, go and bring those data together. We've heard, however you think about it, means organizing around the customer. One of the hottest things that's emerged these days, as many of you have heard, have seen, many of you probably use them, is what's called CDPs, Customer Data Platforms, which job is literally to do that, to bring data together. But all of this means who you hire, how you organize, how you're structured, the processes, how people spend their time in marketing is going to change as machines increasingly do more of the roles, particularly sort of the more tactical, less important ones. And you're going to have to hire people that actually whose jobs is literally to manage the machines. That is going to be a role, a job title in the future, is literally, manning the machine. And finally, sort of, or next to last, is experiment. Think beyond marketing. We heard, I think, a lot of that today. I met with an agency in Detroit a couple years ago that works with 3 of the big auto companies, not the big 3, and one of the things that they uncovered in learning and working with these auto companies is one of the single biggest problems that consumers are having today, believe it or not, is when they buy a new car, they struggle to connect up all of their phones and their technologies. And so what that means is people have to go back to a dealer and get a mechanic who's paid $100 an hour or charges out at that to come in and sit down next to you on your phone to help you figure out how to plug in your iPhone, right? And how to connect it and make everything work. Or you're on the phone with customer support. All of that costs the company money. So fundamentally, things like chatbots, you can basically, as a consumer, just interact with, and it'll walk you through and tell it, saving a lot of time and money. Is that marketing? No, probably not. But I believe if you buy into this idea of marketing needs to own the customer experience, why shouldn't marketing drive this? And lastly, if you're a small, nimble startup or whatever it is, this is not an issue for you. Or if you're a gazelle, but if you work in a large organization, right, we tend to struggle with a lot of things. Think about using the conversation within your organization of using AI and machine learning to actually drive that digital transformation. So in thinking about getting started, AI and machine learning is not just a fad and a trend, but fundamentally don't waste your time by chasing something because the vendor you work with says, hey, we have a new AI-powered whatever it is. Start by asking, what is your business problem? What is that sort of core problem? Can AI help solve it? It may be that AI is not the solution to the problem. Do we have the data? Can you actually, drive it? Do we have the right people and processes? And ultimately, how we measure success, right? If you can use even a simple tool like that Phrasee one, the subject line tool, it's not cheap. Make sure that you set performance metrics up front so you can actually measure if it actually was worth the investment. So in closing, I love this quote. The real danger is not that computers will begin to think like humans, but that humans will begin to think like computers. Thank you very much.